Man, it was a freezing November day in Chicago. I was standing in this empty lot, feeling the chilly wind go right through me. The place was a mess: burnt wood, dirty walls, broken glass everywhere. Debris was flying around in the wind, just like my life feels right now. It's like this place is a symbol of how messed up everything is: lonely, bitter, and full of failure. I kicked a piece of concrete and I kept racking my brain trying to figure out what I could do with the little I had left. I ran into Olivia at a charity event a couple weeks after my 29th birthday. I was basically second in command at my family's retail business, with my great-uncle Seth calling the shots as the majority shareholder and CEO. He told me to go to the event, raise our flag, make some connections, and hopefully drum up some business. The event was a snoozefest, full of self-absorbed people who thought they were hot stuff for raising a few grand to build a library. They were on a whole different level. Mother Teresa, I was just trying to be nice, nodding, smiling, and sometimes biting my tongue until it bled, hoping for a chance to leave early. Then Olivia sat next to me, flashed a huge smile, and started talking like we were old pals. She was this light, graceful girl with brown hair and bronze skin, who was so confident and easy to talk to. Suddenly, I didn't mind fundraising anymore. I've always been a pretty stubborn and competitive guy in school, work, or sports, but I've never felt like this before. I was feeling pretty good in social situations after I finished business school. I was basically married to my job, and with my natural awkwardness, it made it even harder to connect with women. Because I was so shy, I hardly ever asked a woman out unless I knew her for a long time. But then I met Olivia, and I just couldn't resist her. By the end of the night, I mustered up the courage to ask her out to dinner. Surprisingly, we had a blast, and we actually had a lot in common and plenty to chat about. I totally caught feelings for her, and turns out she felt the same way. When I brought her home, it was obvious we were gonna be hanging out a lot. We were dating for a few months, and things got pretty steamy real quick. Before we knew it, we were seeing each other a few times a week and spending a lot of time getting down and dirty. I was definitely into her and wanted to take things to the next level, but I was scared of getting rejected or scaring her off. But then Olivia made it pretty clear last night that she thought I was moving way too slow. Instead of just giving me a goodnight kiss at the front door, she took matters into her own hands and started unbuttoning my pants. She practically dragged me into the house by my well, you know. I was totally caught off guard, but I followed her lead. I wasn't a virgin, but I didn't have much experience with women either. I always thought that passionate lust was something only men did, but Olivia was quick to prove me wrong. Let's just say she gave me a ride I won't be forgetting anytime soon. A mechanical bull seemed easy, but after we finished I was totally wiped out. It was the most fun I've ever had in my life. After that, things got more intimate and our relationship got stronger. Within a few months, we were living together, and a little over a year later, we got married. We moved into a nice 4-bedroom house in a neighborhood with lots of trees, did some landscaping, got a dog, and life was great. Almost everything about being married suited me. Finally found someone to get rid of my lonely feelings without even realizing it. They gave me unconditional emotional support, satisfying physical intimacy, and a deep connection through meaningful sex. Having someone to love and who loved me back was all I ever wanted, and then some. Of course, there were some issues. I was always tied up with work, so Olivia got a bit annoyed with my availability. And I'm sure there were a few habits of mine that bugged her too. Naturally, there were things about her that got on my nerves as well. But the biggest challenge was dealing with her family more than I would have liked. Doesn't sound like a fairy tale, does it? Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate her family. They were nice, decent folks, pretty polite, and didn't have any major red flags. But I just wasn't super keen on hanging out with them a ton. Her parents were friendly and outgoing, and they seemed to dig me. But they were always giving us lectures on how we should live our lives and pushing us to have kids. Luckily, we didn't spend enough time together for it to really bug me, so it wasn't a huge deal. Her little sister Mindy and her husband were a bit of a pain for me. Mindy was basically a shorter, chubbier version of Olivia. She dressed like Olivia, talked like Olivia, and whenever Olivia was around, she was always glued to her side. They were like two peas in a pod, whispering secrets, giggling at inside jokes, and gossiping shamelessly about everyone they knew. Since they lived just 15 minutes away, we ended up hanging out a lot. But hey, no harm in that. I guess maybe it was jealousy, but when she was hanging out with Mindy, she wasn't really paying attention to me. It was pretty annoying. And Mindy's husband didn't help things either. He was this tall, good-looking guy named Bruce who was friendly and laid back. In my opinion, he wasn't all that bright. He inherited his family's furniture store in Joliet, and that was pretty much all he talked about. He acted like the store was some big deal like Microsoft, and he was always bragging about how well it was doing. No one else in the furniture business had a clue what they were doing. It was a mess. The store was clearly struggling, and I was certain that part of the problem was Bruce himself. But I just wanted peace and for Olivia to be happy, so I didn't want to cause any issues with her family. So I sat there nodding my head, pretending to listen as Bruce rambled on. Olivia had asked me to help Mindy and Bruce. We had been married for almost 2 years at that point. She had set up some fancy plan. Me and the missus had a fancy dinner with candles and music to get us in the mood. She was all dolled up, hinting at a fun night in bed. Being a clueless newbie husband, I thought she just wanted some action between the sheets. But as the night went on, it became obvious she had other ideas. She kept going on about how fortunate we were to have a fat bank account and how we could help others. Then, with a touch of despair, she confessed her concerns about Mindy and Bruce struggling to make ends meet. Bruce was in some serious debt and struggling to keep up with payments. If he didn't get some help, he wouldn't be able to finish his inventory list. I could see where this was heading and got straight to the point. How much do they need, Liv? She hesitated, raising her eyebrows to show that I had thrown her off her planned presentation. After chewing her lip for a moment, she shyly admitted, he needs 50 or 60 grand. That'll set him free and give him some confidence. I nearly choked. Sure, we were doing all right, but most of my cash was tied up elsewhere. Being locked up in a family trust with that much money would have seriously hurt our cash flow. I knew I could withdraw the money if I had to, but I didn't want to deal with explaining it to Bernie Blackman, our top lawyer who managed the trust. He would do it, but he'd definitely hassle me about it for a while. He wasn't mean, he just took his job of safeguarding the money and the business very seriously. As I thought about it, the only time in our whole marriage that I tried to ignore Olivia's serious request was when she asked for a lot of money. I was like, I don't know, Liv, that's a lot of cash. She gave me a frown and was like, Mindy says they have some great ideas and they'll pay us back right away. They make good money, so don't worry. I wasn't convinced though. I was pretty sure I'd be wasting a bunch of money if I gave it to Bruce. But I wanted Olivia to be happy, so I went ahead and wrote the check. Listen, we gotta make sure Olivia knows that the 60 grand we lent her is not coming back anytime soon. I remember someone telling me that when you lend money to family, just consider it gone forever. That way, you won't get all pissed if they never pay you back. To me, it's like we just gave Olivia's sister and her useless husband a 60k gift. I knew deep down it wasn't gonna fix their issues anyway. He couldn't cut it as a business owner, even with the cash. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I wanted to be a decent guy for her and her fam. I was willing to fork over 60k to make them happy. A few months after lending Bruce the money, I was at home searching for a flash drive with important stuff on it. I have a habit of misplacing things, so I tore the house apart looking for it. After checking all the usual spots, I ended up in the guest room. So I was in Olivia's room, right? And I was checking out the table and even peeked under the bed. When I got up, I noticed that the bed was all lumpy, like not how it usually is in Olivia's house. It was a bit messy, more than I would have caused by snooping around. It was pretty clear that someone had been lying in it and just quickly pulled up the sheets without fixing them properly. I didn't think much of it at the time, but later that night I casually mentioned it to Olivia like hey, did someone crash in your bed? So, I recently checked out the guest bed and it was a bit messy. Olivia started stumbling over her words, looking all flustered and nervous. She was like, well, I took a nap there earlier. Sorry, I was cleaning and got so tired that I just hopped into bed without cleaning anything. At that point in our marriage, I trusted Olivia so much that it didn't even cross my mind that her explanation could be anything other than the truth. I actually found it kind of funny how nervous and embarrassed she seemed about needing to take a nap. I dozed off in the middle of the day, but that wasn't the only thing I missed. Over the next year or so, a bunch of weird stuff went down that should have clued me in that Olivia wasn't all she seemed. Like, I just accepted without question that her normally chill job as an assistant manager at a small indie bookstore suddenly had her at a lengthy meeting every Tuesday. A meeting supposedly super crucial that I shouldn't have questioned. Hit her up now. I believed her excuses for the little bruises showing up in weird spots, like under her clothes or in the laundry. And then there was the whole ordeal with the orange juice. Olivia started shopping at some fancy grocery store that didn't have my favorite stuff, including my go-to orange juice. I whined about it and told her to switch stores, but she was stubborn. So, like, the new store is way better and easier for her cause it's right on her way home from her Tuesday meetings. Her grocery shopping choices may not seem suspicious, but it made me stop and think. And then I realized she was cheating on me. Less than 18 months after the first loan, Olivia started hinting that Bruce and Mindy needed more money. By then, he hadn't even paid back a fraction of the original $60,000 and I wasn't having it. Olivia kept bugging me for extra cash to help out a failing business, but I tried to ignore her hints. She wouldn't give up and even mentioned that Mindy and Bruce might suffer if they didn't improve their inventory. Trying to be the nice guy, I couldn't flat out say no. So, I reluctantly agreed to check out Bruce's business plan and see his store. I was hoping Olivia would back off once I did my due diligence. Man, that was a total waste of money. I went to Bruce's store on Monday morning and he was all hyped up, showing me around, introducing me to everyone, acting like we were best buds. He was so confident, talking about his big plans for the store and how it would make a ton of money with a few changes. Bruce and I sat down to chat. So, I was in his office for like 30 minutes, trying to be as nice as possible while telling him that I think his business has some serious issues. I basically hinted that if he didn't start saving money and lowering prices, he wouldn't attract more customers or make more money, even with the changes he's planning. I even kinda suggested he should maybe think about selling the business and doing something else, but he got super mad and kept insisting that all he needed was a makeover. To make things better, I couldn't just straight up say no to his money request, so I told him I didn't have enough cash on me to loan him a big amount and that it would have to come from a trust. I said I'd chat with Bernie to see if he could make the loan happen, but I couldn't promise anything. My idea was to avoid drama and make it look like I was really trying to get him the money before telling him the bad news and kinda throwing Bernie under the bus. Why I know, I had to let him go, even though it was kinda cowardly. I just wanted to avoid drama in the family and didn't feel like losing a bunch of money. Bernie was pretty much willing to do whatever I asked, but I always made it clear to everyone that he had to manage the trust carefully and I couldn't just override his decisions. It might seem harsh to paint Bernie as the villain, but honestly, I think he kinda liked playing that role and never once griped to me about it. After our talk, Bruce just nodded and gave me a big, cocky smile. I knew he thought he was gonna get all the credit, so he shook my hand real hard and patted me on the back, making me feel even worse as I walked away. I left the parking lot, driving down the highway, thinking about meeting up with Bruce and trying to clear my conscience for being a bit of a coward and kinda shady in his store. I was cruising along, not really paying attention to anything around me, when I saw something that seemed like a weird coincidence at first, but then turned into a Yo, I had this weird feeling when I saw this small grocery store that was different from the big chains. It was painted green and had a big sign with Salvador on it. It was so unique that I knew I had never seen anything like it before. But for some reason, the name sounded familiar and it took me a while to figure out why. After thinking about it for a bit, I finally realized that Salvador's was the store Olivia started shopping at. It didn't have my favorite orange juice and was much more convenient to get to. But this store wasn't the same as the one I was thinking of. So I was thinking, like, why would she be at that store on a Tuesday when it's nowhere near her work or our house? It just didn't add up, you know. Unless she's secretly into furniture shopping or something. Weird, right? I decided to turn around and drive back to Bruce's furniture store. I parked in the lot for a bit, pulled out my phone, and double-checked that this was the only Salvador's store in Chicago. So, I was sitting there for like 15 or 20 minutes just racking my brain trying to figure out why the hell she would be shopping there. I was thinking maybe Olivia has another job nearby or maybe she goes to a gym around here, but deep down I knew the real reason, which I didn't want to admit. I needed more info, so I decided to confront Bruce in person. I got out of the car and marched over to the furniture store like I meant business. Yo, so I saw the clock on the window showing that the store closes at 8 on weekdays, but on Tuesdays they shut down at noon. The sketchy feeling I had earlier just kept getting worse. I walked in and went straight to the first employee I saw, this kinda awkward middle-aged dude stirring his coffee. I was like, sorry to bother you, but I really need to talk to Bruce McCoy ASAP. And he just cut me off all annoyed, saying he's on break. I know I'm being pushy, but this is important. I had to talk about some important money stuff with him and needed more info. I was waiting for him to respond, but he just kept stirring his coffee and taking sips, completely ignoring my request. It was clear why they weren't able to promote the product, and I was left speechless for a moment before speaking up again, this time with a more urgent tone. I was like, seriously, this is super important. Can you look into it for me? He gave me a tired look, but then a look of recognition crossed his face. Oh, you're the guy who was here earlier with... Hey, Bruce is in a meeting with the supplier right now, but you can chill in the break room until he's done. He shouldn't be too long, maybe like half an hour maximum. He led me back to the room slowly and left me with a cup of coffee and the TV remote. I had a quick plan to confront Bruce head-on and bluff about having solid proof that he and Olivia were cheating. I was gonna threaten to spill the beans if he didn't come clean immediately. So, like, if Mindy and her fam find out about Bruce cheating, I'm thinking he's out of there. But if he didn't cheat, then I guess I just gotta deal with the embarrassment. Maybe I'll try to make a joke out of it or something. As I paced around the room, I kept going over the speech in my head, picturing how I could drop hints that I had pics or videos, or maybe I'd say Olivia spilled the beans. As I thought about the upcoming showdown, I absent-mindedly looked around the room, flipping through magazines and scrolling through stuff. Man, I was flipping through a few TV channels before I decided to snoop around for clues. It hit me slowly that if they were scamming people at the store, there was a good chance it was happening in this break room. And if they were pulling a scam here, they were definitely using that beat-up couch I was staring at. I glared at the sofa for a minute or two, feeling a mix of anger and unease. It was a worn-out pea-green color with some coffee stains and a tear in the fabric on one of the armrests. It had definitely seen better days and would probably be involved in some shady business. I felt more comfortable in a dump or thrift store. I lifted the pillow and got excited when I saw it was a pull-out bed with sheets on it. I made sure Bruce was still in his office before pulling out the bed. The sheets were a mess, all wrinkled up with a couple of yellowed spots that looked like they could be from sex. There were even a few lipstick stains and the bed smelled like perfume. As I opened up the bed, I noticed some debris on the floor under the sofa. I reached up above the bed with my right hand, stretching and straining to grab the dirty carpet below. I pulled up items one by one and found a pen, 37 cents in change, a broken coffee cup, an empty tube of KY gel, and a receipt from a restaurant. The receipt was from a Mexican restaurant that Olivia likes to eat at, and there was her signature on it, smooth and elegant. Looking back, I realized that the check was just weak evidence that could easily be explained away by anyone. So, there were a bunch of things that didn't add up, but then it all clicked and I realized my wife was cheating on me with my loser brother-in-law. Her sketchy schedule, her bruises, her weird choice of underwear, and the mess in our bed all pointed to her being unfaithful. I had been thinking of scaring him into confessing, but now I knew I needed solid proof before I confronted them. Otherwise, it could all blow up in my face. I could pretty much figure out when and where they are gonna screw me over. I was sure I could gather the evidence I needed. I folded up the bed and sat on the sofa, gritting my teeth in anger, my heart racing. I've been ripped off in business before, and even got cheated in a card game once, but I've never felt such betrayal in my life. I was about to lose it, ready to scream, cry, shout, and punch the wall all at once. But slowly, I calmed down from this emotional rollercoaster. So I was feeling this intense urge to get back at someone, why no? I took a step back, tried to chill out, and started thinking about my situation. I was trying to be all logical and detached about it, thinking about Bruce and my wife's weaknesses and how I could use that to make myself feel better about my bruised ego. My first thought was to just straight up beat the crap out of Bruce, but then I realized that would land me in jail. So then I thought about just saying no to the loan and demanding all the money owed to me instead. Hey, so Bruce came back to me right away, but it reminded me of what Bernie said to me once. I was thinking about getting a loan from a bank that was really pushy, and Bernie warned me against it. He said that if you owe money to someone, especially someone who doesn't care about you, then they basically control you. I wanted to have some leverage over Bruce. I looked back into his office and saw him standing there, shaking hands with a supplier. I waved and smiled at him, and he waved back. He walked the supplier to the door and then quickly came back to the break room. Hey. Hey Mike, did you forget something? Do you need more info? I just shook my head and smiled. Listen, Bruce, I've been thinking about it and I just wanted to say that I might have come off the wrong way earlier. I really hope you get where I'm coming from. I think you're a solid businessman and you've got a real shot at success with this shop. But as I was leaving, I realized I might have phrased things poorly when I asked about your backup plans. He smiled and replied, Nah, Mike, I'm good. Hey man, the businessman was really grilling me with tough questions, but I just wanted to let you know that I really believe in what you're doing here. You're like family to me, and I want to make sure this investment is not only safe but also the right move for you. I didn't want you to leave without knowing that I'm gonna bust my ass to get this money for you. I'm confident we'll get it, I don't have much doubt in my mind about it. Hey, so I need to dip into my personal savings to get the money, but I'm confident I can convince Bernie to agree and we'll have the cash for you. Bruce had a hopeful look on his face as I talked. He was like, wow, that's awesome. I'm telling you, this business is about to blow up. Trust me, this loan is in good hands with me, just like it would be with the bank. Don't stress, I got this. I'm not worried at all, Bruce. Bernie will probably want us to sign some kind of agreement, because that's just how he is. Yo, I can get all the paperwork signed in a few days if that works for you. You should have the money in about a week. I walked into Bernie's office the next morning, closed the door, and sat down in a chair. Bernie was on the phone, jotting down some stuff, and he held up a finger to let me know he'd be done in a sec. I was getting antsy while he finished up the call, and he definitely saw that because when he hung up, he looked right at me. Yo, Mike, why you all jittery this morning? I coughed and leaned in, asking Bernie, I think I need to tap into a trust for a big loan. You think that's doable? Yeah, shouldn't be an issue. What kind of loan are we talking about? Bernie asked, clicking away on his computer to pull up some trust fund info. Clearing my throat once more, I leaned in closer and said, before we start all the paperwork, I need one thing first. Listen, this is top secret stuff, okay? I need you to keep your trap shut, all right? Don't go blabbing to Seth or anyone else at work or in the fam. I only want you and me to know what I'm up to here. So, he's sitting there, looking all serious, and finally he says to Mike, look, this ain't no shady business, all right? It's all legit. What I need from you is to make a kick-ass document that's top-notch. He shook his head, and I was like, I want to borrow some cash, but I need you to whip up some loan papers for me. I want everything laid out crystal clear, with the business as collateral for the loan. And make sure the consequences for not paying up are spelled out real clearly. It's almost like you're expecting me to default or something, trying to set a trap. So, who's the target here and why? I paused for a second before saying, So, I stared right at him and told him I want to set up my brother-in-law, Bruce, all because of Olivia. He looked shocked, opened his mouth a bunch of times like he was gonna say something, but never actually said a word. Finally, he took a sip of water from a glass on the table and asked me if I was really sure about this. I said hell yeah. Within a week, I had the document ready and I took it to Bruce for him to check out and sign. He consulted with his lawyer, a little buff dude named Tim, who also happened to be his. Hey cousin, come chill with us and check out this document. I checked it out last night and it's pretty much what I expected for a business loan. But there are a few things I want to mention before you sign, Bruce. Okay. Bruce just flashed his typical clueless smile, always agreeable. Sure, give me the info, Tim. Tim cleared his throat and gave Bruce a close look. I could swear I saw a hint of disdain in his eyes, like he knew Bruce didn't really get how to run a business. All right, so here's the deal. This $425,000 loan is gonna be paid back over 7 years. You've got a pretty standard interest rate here, and your payments will start right away at a little over $6,000 a month. Bruce nodded, but the actual amount you'll get is only $365,000 since we are combining it with that loan you took out a few years back. Mike will get his $60,000 back, and you'll get the rest. Clear? Understand? I see, Italian, Bruce answered smugly with a slight Italian accent. Tim looked at him and sighed quietly. Okay, next up is the loan. Secured by collateral, it's tied to your business and the property above Keuch. Is this where they hunt ducks? He asked. Bruce pointed to Bernie while talking to him. They want to make sure Mike's trust is protected in case the business goes under. He winced briefly, then quickly added, but that won't happen, the business is in great shape, I think. And Bernie Black seems to think so too. He nodded at me and smiled. And Mike definitely thinks so, really Mike? I replied with as much enthusiasm as possible. Bruce showed me the books. I think he's onto something good here. I smiled, but I gotta say, Bernie is super conservative. He always thinks about the worst-case scenario. He wants to make sure the trust is protected no matter what, even if the business fails, which he thinks is impossible. So it's really important to him that there's something to cover the trust in case something goes wrong. Soers frowned and then gave Bruce a death stare. Do you get that if you mess up, you could end up losing the business and maybe even the land for duck hunting to the trust? This thing has been in our family for ages, mate, Bruce said with a serious tone, maybe trying to show that he got the warning and was taking it seriously. I get the risks, but honestly, I'm pretty sure the business will do well. It's way safer to get this loan than to struggle without it, you know what I mean. And remember, if we miss a payment, the fines start piling up after just 3 months. Got it? I hear you loud and clear, I replied. He flashed a smile at me, like we were in on some secret together, like he got where I was coming from. I told Bernie he can't slap on extra charges unless it's really bad stuff. Olivia was so happy about Bruce's business taking off now that he's got cash to fix things. I bit my tongue and didn't say what I was really thinking, that Bruce is the real problem and money won't fix it. I kept quiet about Bruce's business skills for a while. When I was with Olivia, the easiest thing I had to do was gather more info before I could end my marriage the way I wanted. It was gonna take some time, so I had to keep my emotions in check. They were all over the place, going from sad to mad to disgusted when I thought about her betrayal. Trying to have dinner with her without flipping out was a real challenge, and sex was something I tried to avoid if I could. When I had no other option, I had to rely on memories of a wild sexual encounter from years ago when I was 18 and out with my friends. During spring break, we went to San Diego for a night and ended up in Tijuana to let loose. We drank, watched some really explicit and pretty disturbing sex shows, and ended up with a few. Somehow, I got paired up with a woman in her 30s who had clearly been through some tough times. She wasn't exactly easy on the eyes, and maybe even worse than I remember since I was pretty drunk. Even in my drunken state, I had serious doubts about going any further with her. So, I was about to take this girl to bed, but I was trying to bail out and make excuses. My friends were all over me, questioning my manhood, my sexuality, and all that stuff. I felt like I had no choice, so I put on a fake smile, chugged a few more drinks, gritted my teeth, and followed her upstairs to a dingy private room above the bar. I had to act like she wasn't even there, like she was just some object for my pleasure. In the end, I ended up treating her like a piece of meat to get the job done. Having her and getting it on with her, even with all the noise from the bar, the cramped room, the dirty sheets, and her not-so-great smell. So, over the next few weeks, when I hooked up with Olivia, she became that in my mind again. I just closed my eyes, held my nose emotionally, and did her like I did that poor Mexican girl years ago. No tenderness, no affection, just a biological function. Once I got started, it was almost too easy to go at it as hard and fast as I could. I was pretty rough with my technique, and of course, Olivia noticed. So, things started to shift and she brought it up, saying she wished we could have had some nice, romantic sex when we hit the sheets. But, all in all, she didn't seem too bothered by the fact that we did it and actually thought it was better than the sex we'd been having. I reckon she could have made a killing from American tourists in Tijuana in another life, gathering solid proof of someone cheating. Turns out, getting that proof was harder than expected. Bruce used some of the cash to spruce up the store a bit. Okay, so one day there were a bunch of workers walking around, fixing stuff. I had a feeling that the electrician who had my 500 in his pocket was gonna sneakily put a camera and recorder in one of the light fixtures on a Monday morning, about a month after Bruce found the money on the sofa in the living room. In 2 days, he'd clean up the evidence. I had a pretty good idea of what Bruce and Olivia were planning, so I thought I was ready for whatever I'd see. So I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna chill in my office at work, sip on some booze, munch on some chips, and watch the shitshow unfold like it was a movie or something. But let me tell you, seeing your old lady getting it on with some other dude is way shittier than just knowing it's happening. By the time the recording ended, I was so wasted on scotch that I couldn't even stumble my ass home. I trashed my desk, puked twice, and even chucked a paperweight at my office door. The rest of the story is pretty much what you'd expect. I started at the beginning of the day on Tuesday and I started looking around quickly until I spotted this lady in a blue dress hauling a big shopping bag into the room. She grabbed some fresh sheets from the bag and spread them out on the sofa. I slowed down the recording to normal speed and confirmed with a sinking feeling that it was Olivia. After changing the sheets, she pulled out a bottle of wine and 2 glasses from her bag. Olivia then stripped off her blue dress, folded it neatly, and stashed it away before kicking back in thigh highs. She was wearing sexy lingerie and a skimpy bra, reading a book while sitting on the edge of the bed. It felt kinda surreal, like that weird performance art show I saw in New York where a half-naked girl was reading some strange poetry and everyone was just staring at her boobs instead of listening. When Bruce walked in, Olivia put her book down, smiled, and hugged him. But then she pushed him away a bit, scolding him for being late. Waiting for him to show up, she asked why she couldn't just be patient and wait for him to arrive. They both laughed at the old joke, then shared a kiss for a bit. Olivia then went for his belt, undid his pants, and pulled them down along with his underwear. The sex I witnessed wasn't anything special, it seemed like just their usual routine. They quietly went through the motions, each one knowing what the next move would be. It was pretty boring, with him just going at it with a steady rhythm. So, there was this metronome thingy that was pretty dull until around the 10-minute mark when Bruce hit his peak and it seemed like Olivia was in sync with him, stretching out her legs and throwing her head back. They just lay there quietly for a bit until he turned on his side and they started making out. By the time they were done, I was so upset and pissed off. I could feel those images burned into my brain like a permanent scar that would never go away. Man, I was so pissed at those 2 traitors that I couldn't bring myself to forgive them. But hey, at least I had a plan to end my marriage. As I went to turn off the video, I saw them chatting in bed. Olivia was lying on her side, propping her head up with her hand and drawing lazily on Bruce's chest. They were whispering, smiling, and looking all satisfied. Olivia started grumbling about using the furniture store as their love shack, and Bruce just listened. He rolled over and said, "Come on, Liv, if we use the hotel, we'll leave evidence for sure. We almost got busted using one of our places. We really don't have a choice." Olivia shrugged, I know, but I wish we had somewhere else to go. I don't like this room, and changing dirty sheets from last week before getting it on doesn't really turn me on." Bruce reached out and caressed her cheek, smiling. "Well, we could always just run away together." Olivia laughed and Bruce looked thoughtful. His smile kinda dropped. "Liv, have you ever wished you didn't marry Mike? I mean, I love Mindy and she's a great wife, but sometimes I wonder if maybe it would have been better if you and I got hitched instead," Olivia said, sitting up on the bed with her back against the sofa, hugging her knees close to her chest. She looked at Bruce thoughtfully before replying, "Come on, Bruce, how many times we gotta go over this? What we have is something real special." "Hey, I think we have something special, but honestly, I don't think it would be a good idea for us to get married. Sure, we would be happy together, but I also have feelings for Mike, and you're into Mindy. If we were to be together, it would just be us, and I know Mike is loyal and would never try anything with me if I was married. Plus, I don't think Mindy would be cool with that either." She kissed Bruce on the cheek and caressed his chest with her hand. "The thing is, Bruce, people like us have a special gift when it comes to love. It's totally cool to love more than one person at once, it's just natural for us. But Mindy and Mike are totally different, they are so uptight, they could never handle what you and I do. They can't control their emotions and make everyone happy like we can. When I heard that, I was so mad that I threw my paperweight through the office door. Maybe it's because I loved her, or maybe it's because she was the only woman who ever loved me. I never realized how full of myself I was. My wife was so full of herself, thinking she could spin her cheating into some kind of noble act. She didn't see it as betraying me, but rather spreading love in the world. She believed she had every right to cheat and saw it as a moral duty. I ended up crashing on the couch in my office that night, finishing up some work. The next day, I came home to Olivia standing there with her hands on her hips, looking all grumpy. "Where the hell were you last night?" I was so worried. "You didn't call, you didn't text, you didn't give me any clue at all." I had to stop her with a raised hand yesterday evening. I was at work and got drunk, so I couldn't go home and just stayed there. She looked at me with total confusion and said, "Wait, you were drunk at work?" I just smiled and nodded. Then she said, "Well, you could have at least let me know what was going on." I almost called the police. "And why were you drinking at work anyway?" She was staring at me, but she looked totally confused when she asked me. Without answering, I just walked past her and into the living room. I sat down on the sofa, put my feet up on the coffee table, took the briefcase onto my lap, and opened it. Olivia let out a frustrated sigh as she followed me into the living room and angrily sat down in the chair across from the sofa. "Hey, how about some answers, Mike? Why did you drink so much at work? What happened last night? What's going on?" I kept going through my case and pulled out a couple of things. "Hold on a sec, Liv, I'm just organizing these folders on the couch next to me. Let me clean up a bit first." I sorted through the papers, took my feet off the table, replaced them with papers, and leaned forward. I rubbed my hands together like I was about to dig into a feast. I glanced at Olivia and smiled. "All right, let's get started." "What do you mean, let's begin?" "Well, after what went down last night." "What happened last night?" Olivia's aggressive vibe quickly shifted to something more laid back. When I got home, I could tell she was a little scared. "Can you at least tell me what you were up to last night?" "Oh yeah, I watched the video." "Yeah, I saw the video of you and Bruce getting it on that couch in the living room, and I gotta say, it was kinda messed up. So maybe I freaked out a bit. You get me?" I just gave Olivia a thin, emotionless smile as her face went from confusion to shock to pure terror. Her mouth was hanging open, twitching slightly, unable to make a sound. Her eyes were filled with tears. She kept looking nervously between the papers on the table and the door, like she was waiting for someone or something to walk in. If we just put the papers away, everything would be fine. Finally, she said, "I don't get it, Mike. What are you saying?" "Come on, Olivia, you can't be that dense. I'm talking about you and Bruce and what you two have been up to every expletive Tuesday for a year." I pointed to the papers in front of me. "I'm talking about the end of our relationship." Olivia freaked out and covered her mouth, then I waited for her response. "Mike, we can figure things out, I believe I can make you see." "Oh, I think I get it, Liv," I said as I took a DVD out of my briefcase, held it in my hands, and slid it across the table to her. "Last night, I got a bunch of info that helped me understand a real goldmine of new facts about my wife and brother-in-law." She looked at the DVD like it was a deadly snake, kinda pulling away from it. "Liv, you're not even trying to understand. This is your copy. I'm not gonna tell you how I got it, but I have my own for next time." To continue teaching you about love and loyalty, she leaned in and started to get up. For a second, it seemed like she was gonna come towards me, but I raised my hand and stopped her. She sat back down, biting her lip for a moment. Then, she looked me straight in the eye and spoke again, slowly and confidently, but I could tell she was hiding some fear in her voice. "Hey Mike, you gotta chill and really consider this. It's not worth ruining everything just because we are different. I care about you and I've always been open to working through our differences. But seriously, cheating on your husband is not some kind of special talent. Let's be real, anyone can do that. Talent is definitely not the right word here. Look, I've been staring at the ceiling for a moment and then back at me, and I believe the right word is ability. I have a greater capacity to love, and I can and have successfully loved more than one person at a time. Besides, forget about old-fashioned ideas about love and relationships. There are no reasons why I can't or shouldn't use my ability. Just stop, honestly, you're just annoying me with your excuses. I get that you think you have some special ability that gives you the right to deceive, lie, and cheat when you should be faithful, but really, that's just not cool. Listen, it's no excuse for someone to be seeing multiple people at once. It doesn't mean they are some kind of love expert, it just means they're cheaters. Olivia went from being all sorry and apologetic to being pissed off and super confident. Are you seriously calling me a cheater? She went off on me, saying it's probably true from your perspective, but I never stopped loving you or Bruce. I never betrayed my feelings or sold out. My feelings about what I did are not affected by some outdated rule that says I can only be with one person. So yeah, you might see me as a cheater, but when I look at myself in the mirror, I have no regrets. She was all into it, breathing heavily and looking all flushed. There was a fire in her eyes that made me want to challenge her, but I backed off. Do you really want to be in a relationship like that? Open to seeing other people and loving someone new every day. And then the next one, yeah sure, whatever floats your boat. But acting like you didn't cheat, that you weren't being dishonest, is total BS. You never told me you were hooking up with Bruce, and you know damn well I wouldn't have been cool with that. You felt my anger and looked away, avoiding my eyes. But I turned to face you and said, so you chose to lie by not telling the whole truth, the biggest load of crap I've ever seen. You made me and pretty much everyone else believe that we were. We were a couple, exclusive and loyal to each other. But then you went off and started or kept on having secret flings with Bruce, sneaking around in furniture stores trying to hide your cheap escapades. You've been lying, living a lie, no matter what. You have some messed up family philosophy that makes you a cheater. By this point, she had angry tears streaming down her face, her mouth clenched tight, more mad than sad. She was slowly shaking her head in disagreement with what I said, but seemed to have no words to express her feelings. I kept staring at her, waiting for a response. But when she didn't say anything, I ended the awkward silence by pushing the papers closer to her and telling her to read them and find a lawyer. This is happening, it's real. Finally, she spoke up and asked, what if I don't want a divorce? I replied, well, tough luck, Liv, because it's happening. But hey, that doesn't mean you'll be alone. I moved out that evening and got an apartment closer to work. I quickly went back to being my old self, just a hard worker. I was a businessman who had no time or interest in socializing. The hours I spent at work were pure hell, and people could tell. But I knew that if I stayed home, I'd just drive myself crazy thinking about Olivia and her affair with Bruce. So I had to bury myself in work and try to move on from my marriage as fast as I could. That's just how I deal with stuff like this. Competition is all about doing whatever it takes to come out on top. I think most folks who know me in the business world would probably expect me to engage in long, aggressive negotiations to reach a deal. But honestly, that would have just dragged things out, caused more drama, and been a pain in the ass. I was ready to just pay up to get out of the situation quickly and cleanly. So I offered Olivia a big chunk of cash in exchange for her ongoing support, with the warning that I'd pull the offer if she didn't agree to a speedy divorce. Deep down, I guess I wanted her to put up a fight, to insist that we could somehow work things out. I thought my marriage was gonna work out, but she said no to my proposal and fought for the marriage she wanted. She thought our marriage had a slim chance of surviving, but it was more important to her than money. Turns out, that wasn't the case. After some half-hearted objections, she agreed to the terms, and within 60 days, our marriage was done. A few months after the divorce was finalized, Bruce started falling behind on payments like clockwork. He got some warnings and a nasty letter from Bernie, letting him know we were done. He was starting to take the money however he could, calling and emailing with excuses and promises, practically begging for more time to pay. I told Bernie to get tough and made it clear that we would start taking legal action and going after bail as soon as we could. The night before he was supposed to be detained, Bruce begged to meet with me in person and I agreed. It was clear to me then that he was desperate and willing to do anything or take money from anyone to save himself from trouble. I just wanted the money to come from somewhere. Hey Olivia, I was so excited to see you at our meeting in my office after work. Most of the secretaries had already left, but my personal assistant Sherry was still there, ready to help with paperwork if needed. Bruce looked super nervous, like more than I've ever seen him before. His hand was all sweaty when he reached out to shake mine as he awkwardly walked into my office. Behind him, Olivia was standing there looking kind of shy. I couldn't believe how my heart skipped a beat when I saw her. Olivia sat closer to me than Bruce, wearing one of my favorite outfits. She looked amazing. She rocked up, all dolled up and beaming with her bright smile. I knew right away she was here to schmooze with my ex's pals to boost Bruce's odds. All of a sudden, I felt this crazy urge to run up to her, sweep her off her feet, and plant a big kiss on her. But I knew I had to squash that feeling quick before things got messy. So, I put on a grim look, mumbled some half-hearted greeting to acknowledge her presence. Honestly, I was totally shocked she even showed up. I'd been counting on it. I've been looking forward to this meeting for ages and I had it all planned out, but I never expected Olivia to show up. I was worried her being there would mess up my plan to link her to her lover's screw-ups. I thought about telling her to wait outside, but I figured having her there might actually make things better. Bruce kicked things off by trying to butter me up. He shook my hand, flashed a big grin, and started chatting me up about wanting to give something a shot. He wanted me to know he wanted me to be happy and hoped I knew how much he respected me. He was really sorry that things turned out this way. I was shocked when he seemed to want to be friends again, but I didn't believe him. I stared at him without smiling and interrupted him emotionally, telling him to stop with the BS. His apology meant nothing to me. He looked like I had punched him when I said that, then he pursed his lips and looked worried. All right, so he took a deep breath, nodded his head, and then started talking again. Sorry, Mike, let's get down to business. He looked at me like it was my meeting, like he wanted me to keep going, but I just waited for him to speak up. He nervously licked his lips, ran a shaky hand through his hair, and then started going on about how he planned on giving the money back, but he was a bit short on cash at the moment. He mentioned how Bernie can be tough. I didn't think I realized how much he was pushing him to pay up. He kept insisting that the business was about to turn things around and that if he just had a bit more time, he'd be able to get back on track. He tried to convince me that I'd be better off financially if I just gave him more time. I sat back in my chair, watching Bruce closely as he nervously smiled, sweat forming on his forehead and his hand shaking uncontrollably on the table. Bruce, if you weren't such a liar, I might think about cutting you some slack. His eyes got big with shock and worry, and he was about to speak up when I shut him down with a quick look. Come on, Bruce, you've got to get that it's hard to trust a guy who's willing to mess around with his daughter-in-law. And seriously, asking the same woman's husband for money. That's just crazy. Bruce squirmed in his chair while Olivia looked nervous. She cleared her throat and said in a whiny voice, Mike, please, you can't punish Bruce just because I can do whatever the hell I want. I snapped at Olivia, giving her a hostile look, why are you even here anyway? She responded, I thought maybe I could talk you into it for old time's sake. I'm still worried about you. I cut her off sharply and loudly, you thought wrong. Honestly, your presence just reminds me of how Bruce screwed me over by sleeping with you. So do yourself and Bruce a favor and sit back and try to look nice. Just shut up and listen, all right? She was crying and her chin started to quiver, but she did what I told her and sat back in her chair. I turned to Bruce and laid it out for him. Okay, Bruce, here's the deal. You better pay back what you owe on time, or I'm gonna start taking your stuff as collateral. Bruce shook his head angrily. Come on, Mike, you can't shut down my business like this. I can and I will if you don't pay up, Bruce. My advice? Scrounge up some cash, man. Look, mate, I need to find a bank or something to sell, I don't care what, I just need the money. Otherwise, I'll take whatever I can get. But you know, banks won't give me a loan, otherwise I would have gone to them first. And my family can't help, they don't have that kind of money. I stared Bruce straight in the eyes and said, don't give me all that rubbish about your family not having money, I know they do. No, they would help if they could, but they just can't. I pointed my finger at Olivia and asked, what about her, did you ask her for money? Bruce just sat back. Come on, Liv doesn't have it, I laughed. Of course I do. I wrote her a check for $150,000. She's loaded, really, Olivia? I gave Olivia a sly look and Bruce gave her a puzzled look, clearly clueless about the big payment. She looked nervous, maybe even a bit sick. Well, yeah, I have the cash, but I need it. I chuckled again. Stop it, Liv. Remember how convinced you were about giving money to Bruce when you got me involved in the first place? Why the hesitation now? Aren't you sure about it? Come on, help me out here. Convince me that Bruce can turn his business around. If you think it's a good investment for me, why not for you? I gave her a sly grin, waiting for her response. She hesitated, glanced at Bruce, then back at me. Finally, she took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and said in a defiant tone that she could cover the difference for a while. Bruce smiled at her, she weakly smiled back, and they walked off together, Bruce looking more confident and Olivia determined. Walking with disappointment, I held the door open for them and gave them one last instruction. Remember, Bruce, I don't care how, I just need the money. You'll get your money, he spat back at me. Olivia looked worried. Over the next few months, I tried to find comfort in my work. I was professional and efficient with everyone, avoiding any personal conversations at all costs. I refused any social opportunities and preferred to work or be alone. I desperately tried not to think about my wife's betrayal. Man, talk about betrayal. But everything just kept reminding me of her, even that monthly check from Bruce that was sitting on my desk. That check brought me some twisted satisfaction, making me feel like I was getting back at the people who caused my misery by taking their money. And then things got even more messed up when Mindy reached out to me. She sent me a bunch of emails and even called me. I was shocked to find out that Bruce and Olivia had come clean to her about their affair, though I'm sure they sugarcoated it. Mindy took it pretty rough at first, but eventually she came to terms with it. So, they eventually forgave each other, but to my dismay and shock, she kinda mentioned that she thought they were actually dating and had made some sort of deal to keep seeing each other. She even tried to convince me to take Olivia back, but I was so mad and harsh in my replies that I'm pretty sure I made her cry during the second call. After that, she never contacted me again. Mindy's obvious acceptance showed me that Bruce and Olivia's relationship was causing some serious emotional pain. Olivia paid way less than I was expecting. I was freaking out, thinking that Bruce would magically come up with the money to pay off his debt and Olivia, and everyone would be happy. They would probably just pity me for not understanding modern love. But then, the furniture showroom where I met them burned down 9 months later in a huge fire. So, there was this fire that almost took out a bunch of buildings and it made it on the nightly news. I didn't catch the whole story, but Bernie did and he called me right away to chat about it. He was pretty pissed at me for taking a gamble like that, thinking we had just wasted a ton of money. I calmed him down by telling him I would personally cover the loan if things went south, and reminded him that the property was still valuable just because of where it was located. People were obviously wondering about what caused the fire and all that jazz. So, get this, the insurance company straight up said no to paying out. Bruce had zero income coming in from the store, so he ended up defaulting on the loan. I ended up buying the property, which was basically just a pile of smoking ruins, along with 35 acres of duck hunting land in Mississippi. The criminal investigation dragged on for almost 6 months, and the detectives managed to put together a pretty solid circumstantial case against Bruce and Olivia. They were able to show that the store was losing money and Olivia was constantly throwing more and more cash into it to keep it afloat. Bruce even tried some desperate moves to get some cash. Other loans fell through, so they tried to sell the business as a last resort, but no one wanted it even when they dropped the price. Investigators couldn't prove Olivia or Bruce were at the store when it caught fire or that they bought anything to start it, but they think they hired someone to do it. There were lots of searches for arson on Olivia's computer, and phone records showed suspicious communications. Olivia and Bruce had hired a lawyer who was probably paid with the last bit of cash Olivia withdrew before the fire. The lawyer was pretty good, and the district attorney knew he was in for a tough fight. They probably started negotiating with first-degree arson and fraud charges, but the defense was holding out for fourth-degree arson. It became a back-and-forth game to set a trial date, and I was just waiting to testify as a witness. So, I was chilling in the lobby on the first day of the trial, just minding my own business, reading the newspaper, and tapping my foot on the hard bench. Suddenly, this court official comes out and drops the bomb that the trial is cancelled because they reached a deal. We were all told to pack it up and head home. As I was getting my stuff together, Olivia and Bruce strolled in with a bunch of cops and their lawyer. Reporters started swarming them, shoving microphones in their faces, but they kept their mouths shut and didn't say a word. Reporters were talking to their lawyer Bruce, then he met with Mindy and walked out of the lobby with some officers. But Olivia caught my eye and didn't hesitate to come over and talk to me. I have to give her credit for facing me in that situation. Well, Mike, is this your lucky day? Is this what you wanted, for me to be punished for my mistakes? I laughed bitterly and shook my head mockingly. I wanted a loyal wife and a happy marriage. I'll never get what I want from you. At the very least, I just want my money, she snorted. Well, you're not getting it. Are you getting any of this now? Oh, I got some of this back and I have a store, she laughed. And what are you going to do about it? Has it stopped smoking yet? You'd be surprised what a smart businessman can do with a good piece of property, even a smoking one. Her nostrils flared and her face hardened a little. She took a deep breath and paused before speaking again. And now you're happier alone, without anyone, married to your job for the foreseeable future, she gave me a knowing smirk. Don't deny it, I know you. I know you really don't like meeting new people. I'm trying to improve on that. I used to love you, but you're not the only woman out there. She smirked and said confidently, no, not the only one, but I doubt you'll find a suitable replacement, whatever you businessmen call it. Whether you like it or not, you're gonna miss me. I leaned in close and whispered in her ear, I might feel a bit lonely, but you won't, will you? The good news is, you'll be stuck in a cramped space with a bunch of pretty androgynous women. You can spread all that love you have, it'll be good for both you and the lesbians. Olivia totally freaked out when I made my last comment. She backed away from me like I was toxic, her face full of disgust and her eyes shooting daggers. She took a deep breath, chest puffing out aggressively a few times, and then she blew up on me, calling me a self-centered, emotionally messed up jerk. She was screaming as the officers dragged her away from me towards the door. You'll be the same. Feeling empty and lonely without anyone, married to my damn slave as I saw her yelling at me, her love for me gone and replaced with pure hatred. I felt a sudden sadness wash over me, but I held back from showing how much it hurt. I forced a smile and made some sarcastic comments about her foul language in public, but she just kept on insulting me as if I hadn't said a word. But soon enough, I'll break free from this prison and move on with my life, while you'll be left all alone. You'll wish you stayed with me instead of marrying some dull ex-secretary years from now. The door slammed shut behind her, cutting off her rant. I just walked out of the courtroom, feeling relieved to be done with the judgment. But now, with no more meetings or conferences, I felt a sense of sadness and loneliness creeping in. I went to the burnt site and reflected on my life. The temperature dropped and the wind kept hitting me, making me feel even more alone as I took in my surroundings. I was thinking about what to do with all the mess. I wasn't sure if I could fix things or if I should just sell everything, move on, and stick to what I know. It seemed like the safe and maybe even smart choice, but I also knew there was another option, taking a risk and starting over, maybe even opening a new furniture store. I considered the idea of selling furniture successfully from the same spot where Bruce failed. I thought about making a big deal out of it with a ton of advertising and billboards. Maybe even do some TV ads that Bruce and my ex can't ignore. I could call it Olivia and have a huge sale at the last minute. It hit me that the choices I would make for the website were like the ones I made without even realizing for my life in general. Olivia was spot on about me. My default was to withdraw and avoid getting close to people and just focus on work before I met her. I saw myself heading towards a lonely life, financially stable, but man, my life was pretty boring again. I was just sitting on a concrete block, trying to figure out what to do next. I was torn between sticking to my old habits or taking a risk and making a change. I was about to just give up and go back to work, but then the sun broke through the clouds and lit up the place. Yo, across the street there's this wall covered in graffiti. The light hit it just right, giving it a burning orange glow and making the concrete and letters pop. The words were in bold white letters, easy to read, take action. I've always been hella judgmental of superstitious people, letting meaningless stuff control their lives. But here I am, sitting on a cold slab in November, and these words feel like fate, a message from God. I whipped out my cell phone and made the call. Hey Sherry, can you find out which architecture firm designed that fancy new shopping center that everyone's talking about? You know, the one with all the glass and fountains. Hammerstone, I think. She chuckled to herself for a bit before confirming, yep, it's Hammerstone and they are based here in Chicago. Okay, can you set up a meeting with them for me ASAP? She hesitated for a moment before asking, wait, are we planning on building something? I glanced around the office, picturing the new project in my head. I was in the store and all of a sudden I felt really confident, like yeah, I think we can do this. Okay, sure boss, anything else? I bit my lip for a second as I looked at the graffiti across the street again, with the message saying act. Yeah, Sherry, there's one more thing. Do you remember that lady who had fake designer jeans, the tall blonde Brenda? Brenda White, I think. Yeah, Sherry's voice sounded more and more shocked, and I wondered if she thought I was losing it. Can you give me her number? Of course, of course. Hey boss, should I hook it up for you? Nah, I'll do it myself. Thanks. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so your side piece doesn't find out, and be sure to tune in for the next story because it's way better than this one.